Every 45 seconds, someone dies in an alcohol-related crash. Here today, we have two survivors to tell us their stories.
Can you tell us what you did the day of that accident?
So the day of the accident, my husband and I had gone into St. Cloud to go Christmas shopping, and we were on our way home.
It was June 2nd of 2009. Youngest son Kyle had just graduated from high school 9 days before this, and his baseball team had gone to the state tournaments that year, and so the next evening they were going to get together for a season-ending barbecue and picnic. I really wanted to be back for that, so I knew it was going to be a late day, but that was the way I love to do things, I guess. Yeah.
What was your first reaction after the crash?
You know, I have no memory of the crash that night, so the first thing that I remember actually took place probably about 5 weeks later. It was a head-on collision with another 3/4-ton pickup. So I really have no memory. I have no memory of that night. I have no memory of realizing that there was a vehicle coming at me, that I'm going to be in a head-on collision. The first recollection that I have actually was probably about 4 weeks later, on about the 25th or 26th of June, is hearing this news coverage, constant news coverage of the death of Michael Jackson. But I couldn't put together what's going on. And it was at that point then, and again, I could recognize I was laying down someplace, no memory. I was told by my family and my doctors I had been involved in a vehicle accident and I was in the hospital. According to the emergency responders, I was still conscious when they arrived on the scene. I had been pinned in my pickup and they had to cut me out of my pickup to get me out, but I have no memory of that. So.
Well, it was late and I had to work early in the morning, so I had leaned my seat back to fall asleep on the way home, and I actually don't remember the crash at all, being asleep. So the first thing I remember is waking up in the hospital.
What do you remember from the hours after the accident?
Most of what I remember is really things that I've been told because I was unconscious for so long. I've been told that I was extracted from the trunk of the car. I heard stories about, the things that kind of transpired in the emergency room. But the first thing I remember is waking up and seeing my mom on one side of me and my mother-in-law on the other side of me. And I knew right away that something was really wrong, because why would my mother-in-law be standing there and not with her son? And that's when I realized, even before they told me, that Bill had died.
What was your road to recovery?
My road to recovery basically started probably about an hour later. There was a number of motorists that stopped to offer assistance, and the emergency responders from Kidder County arrived on the scene, I'm guessing within probably 45 minutes or an hour. By the time they got me cut out of the vehicle and into the ambulance and headed into Bismarck, lungs and kidneys had already started to shut down. I had lost a lot of blood, and quite frankly, the doctors did not expect me to make it through the night. And since then, they've told me that for about the first 2 weeks that I was in the emergency room, that they had assigned me a 5% probability of surviving. I had a lot of internal injuries. The left side of my body, from about halfway up my chest to about halfway down between my waist and my knee, was ripped open, so there's a lot of internal organ damage. There's a lot of internal bleeding, and that kept them from beginning any surgical procedures on me. They kept pouring blood in the top, so to speak, because it kept running out and leaking out, and before they got all of the bleeding stopped, they used 55 units of blood to transfuse into me. And then, because of, even though the airbag on my vehicle had deployed and activated, my head hit the steering column so hard that the steering wheel is kind of bent around the sides of my head, and so there was a lot of breakage and fracturing to my skull. And So it was interesting, the doctors did basically a facial reconstructive surgery on me, and discovered that one of the many consequences was that I would be permanently and completely blind for the rest of my life. That was obviously a key part of the recovery process, because it was not just physical, but also very, very emotional.
I had closed head trauma. I had punctured lung, several broken ribs, both bones in this arm were broken, and my femur and my hip, and both of my ankles were crushed. They told me I would never walk again. A surgeon reconstructed my ankles and reset my hip. And then I spent the next 4.5 months in a wheelchair because I couldn't put any weight on my ankles. I also couldn't put any weight through this arm because the plates they had to put on the bones had to heal. And then I got to start learning to walk all over again. I also woke up to an entirely new life. I had lost my husband and the child we were expecting, and so I had to start all over again and deal with the grief and the loss and rebuild my whole life.
What measures do you think should be taken to prevent drinking and driving?
I feel like there are no easy answers, and I don't know what the answer is, but you can't really stop somebody from getting behind the wheel, and lowering the level I didn't feel like was necessarily going to have a big impact. I think the biggest thing we can do is just education, but even just getting the word out by doing things like this is probably the most important step that you can take.
I think there are some restrictions that can and should be placed on purchasing, on consumption of alcohol. What I'd like to end this question with is something like this: watch your thinking, or watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. And for those in high school right now, early college age, tremendous opportunity to set those habits that will determine your character and ultimately your destiny.